Hello, and welcome once again to the MS Paint Adventures vestibule. I have decided that while my previous video was OG, there is a whole other aspect that I feel I should get into. So in this video, we will be looking not at what makes Homestuck popular, but what makes it good, and even things that make it bad will also be covered. Shockingly, our first step into why Homestuck is goodies, changes in scope. This and other topics already came up in my other video, but it needs emphasizing just how important they are. The first few acts are kids fumbling around their houses and talking to each other online, and that's sort of bland. But if you didn't have that and cut to the meat here on the first page, it would have had no impact. The storytelling, I mean the meat here, would still have plenty of impact. Haha, okay, sorry. If you look at another similar high quality webcomic, or even just prequel, you can see that having mundane situations is what gives the more theatric ones their punch. There's a common saying where if you ate high quality steak every day, you'd stop appreciating how good it is unless you had toast or something every so often. The same effect applies here. The only difference is acts 1 to 4 are still really good, and anyone who says otherwise has what I like to call wrong opinions. Our next area of Homestuck's good design is use of the medium. No, not the album, silly. The full use of all the freedom that making a comic on a website offers. Sound and animation are both obvious factors in this. The music team, never forget solace, does great work bringing mood into the flashes, and the art team is okay sometimes, I guess. There's not much to say about these aspects other than they are good, and that Hussey is now very capable of showing a lot of activity with just sprites and blurring. But there are less obvious design factors. For example, Doc Scratch's picture a book, the disc 2, the use of real hyperlinks, to name a few. These things build up Homestuck's themes of being online, and in the case of the picture books, are novel ways to give control to the reader, and show separate events simultaneously without it being forced. Before I made this video, I saw that Hussey tweeted about this article. If you haven't read it, I'll spoil the ending. It's shit. The article focuses on Homestuck's use of breaking literal boundaries, as well as the big hand retcon of 86. I'll sum it up that the boundary breaking is also pretty neat, as is the retcon. But for me it had its biggest impact in Cascade, when it enlarged the entire screen. Since then it has been used more often and its impact has lessened as a result. This goes back to the first point I made in case you already forgot. I will now move on so I can stop thinking about that article. Seriously, don't trust that garbage. I went on one of their others and they literally try and call the Russian woman who helped pilot Cherno Alpha a deep character. Seriously. The other big part of the medium is of course the interactivity. From the picture books I mentioned previously, all the way to the giant walkabouts I spent weeks editing so I could have Michuna scream Proto Men lyrics with enough force to break a wall. These are for giving the reader control in most cases, but are sometimes there for purely gameplay, like with Homestuck. And now we're back to the other medium. Fantastic. Seems like a good time to move on before radiation shows up again. Our next topic, which is still one I've already mentioned, is scale. Homestuck is big. This is obvious and it's not a good thing by itself. I will use video games to help give me answers like I usually do. Take a look at the map for the game Fuel. I haven't played this, but I can say two things. Firstly, the map is huge, and secondly, it's fucking empty. There's no point having a lot of area if you can't fill it. Compare with GTA 4 since 5 isn't out at the time I'm making this. GTA is also a driving game, and the map is much smaller than Fuel's, but it is far more lively and diverse. Driving even short distances still have the capacity to be interesting. This is why Homestuck's size is a good thing. It is eventful. It can be interesting on a single page, but the storylines that play out can span months. There are many systems in Homestuck which are a breeding ground for theorizing what may happen next, and the amount of characters means everyone has one they like. Of course, the real reason unexpected things happen in Homestuck is because Hussey does whatever he wants, and can pull planet crackers out of his ass. Another thing that makes Homestuck decent is comedy. I was going to call this section writing, but I thought better of it for reasons you will be seeing soon. Homestuck is pretty funny. I mean, the main character is an actual jokester. What more do you want? Just look at this panel of a defenseless character being forced to paralyze himself from the waist down. It's gold. Huss's writing strength has things that are funny. It's difficult to name a character that hasn't been in at least one comedic scenario. Even brooding anti-heroes can do silly shit, except for Dirk, and have it be funny. As well as the writing, there are also visual jokes, and in the case of animations, good comedic timing. But there are some things that didn't pan out as well. It's time to look at areas of Homestuck that aren't up to par, starting with the Trickster arc. Shit. Try hard writing. Hussy can write serious dialogue sometimes, but a lot of the time it just turns out like this.
We ain't seen nothing.
Hey, that looks like my ham.
A common trope in Homestuck is characters talking with language that is more suited to people older than them, and while this is necessary, it can lead to poor writing. For example, think of all the times when a character became a fountain of knowledge, only for that role to be filled by some other character later on. This is bad for two reasons. Firstly is that the characters stop acting like themselves for a moment, so they can update people on the plot. Secondly is the characters then lose their incredible knowledge for basically the worst reasons. Teresi has come out and said that her powers are useless, and while this is partly angst, she's still wrong as fuck and can blatantly be really helpful with a lot of things. The sudden on-off switch of reasons that specifically enable characters to know things is a subset of a broader problem. It's time to talk about assholes. Of course, Homestuck isn't finished at the time of writing this, and it's possible that everything is wrapped up with minimal exploitation of late story power-ups. But seriously, a ring that can bring anyone back to life no matter what, and it was actually being carted around by the author and shit. I mean, wow. As mentioned, the knowledge characters can suddenly accrue and give out is astonishingly meta. They may as well grab the coin from the dorms while they're at it. And Hussy can't help but add these mechanics, so the only way he can really rein in everyone's power is by arbitrarily turning them off for whatever reason or another. It's pointless to argue about which character could beat who in Homestuck, although that hasn't stopped me before, but characters win based on whether the plot requires it, and nothing more. If Casey had to fight Lord English and win, she would, but that's because she has the infinite power of necromancy on her side. On that note, deaths in Homestuck generally have no impact at this point. You can still get tension by having a god tier die ambiguously and wondering if it counted as heroic, but actual single death fully alive all the way to not exist don't happen, with some exceptions.
Some folks are born made to wave the flag.
Even Slick managed to survive being inside a universe when it exploded, and he doesn't even play Spurb. Do you remember the last time major character deaths had serious implications? Because it was some time ago, and even then Kanea came back to life. The combination of everything we know about powers and deaths being a non-issue siphon huge amounts of possible tension out of the story, which is a shame. There is one final topic to cover, and as it happens it was also one of the positives. Scale. I said earlier that Homestuck's size worked because it was full and lively, but the issue is it's too much so. Before I compared it to GTA. But now I'm going to compare it to the Elder Scrolls. The Elder Scrolls games have a multitude of quests in each town, and they all want you to come in and be the hero, every time. Now you may be thinking that Skyrim was good, in which case Oblivion was better. Get good taste. But the problem is this sort of design only works in games. In Oblivion if you collect a backlog of quests you can do them whenever. It doesn't matter, you don't even have to play through the main quest. But for Homestuck the quote unquote main quest is the story, and that's not something you can just skip. As an aside, neither is the intermission. Homestuck also has many subplots of characters out to kill other characters, with those characters doing things and at least two people at any point trying to create a new universe. Switching back and forth between so many points means they can't be satisfyingly covered without dragging out the story. And this is even worse for the serial reader, who had to sit through weeks of that goddamn Trickster arc. This problem is tackled with the picture books, but it's not enough, and Homestuck remains too incoherent with its story. There's just two other things that bother me, and that is Firstly, reusing sprites. I know Hussy has given reasons for reusing certain shots, and I think it works a lot of the time, but take a look at this. Here we have Teresi in this pose, and in the pose again, and then with this face. These aren't stylized running themes. This is just asset reusal which doesn't have any design value other than it looks lazy. The second thing that bothers me is when characters give exposition of things that shouldn't be questioned. A good example is when Karkat thought their meteor was moving at light speed, and it had to be explained to him that was never stated. This is a character taking on the role of part of the fan base who made this assumption, with the character explaining it taking on the role of hussy. It pulls both out of character and it's completely unnecessary. If something isn't stated, it's the fan's fault for adhering to it. Of course this is just one way that hussy interacts with his fan base, but that doesn't actually stop it from being bad. That's all I have to say about Homestuck's qualities, and if you want to thank me for these tips, please send me your income.